Hey hobo man, hey dapper Dan, you both got your style, but brother, you're never fully dressed without a smile. Your clothes may be rumily, they stand out a mile, but brother, you're never fully dressed without a smile. I was thinking that because it says Dapper Dan. All right. And I wanted to talk about tonight, or what I wanted to talk about, was like the early areas of interest or early topics for us songwriters. Sullivan's dog, and our early group was the Autumn People. So Dan and I almost primarily, and the other guys a little bit. But the areas of life that we also like to talk about were the other things in life that were common, shared interests, like as friends and so forth. You know, the stuff that we, as friends, like bonded over. Friends, you know, platonic friends that we bonded over. So, and this was a great number of things in life, besides being like part of the same like school, going to the same like middle school and high school. Like, you know, that by itself is something. I don't want that in the picture. Does that look better? Yeah, it looks better. Star Wars was one of the things, because at that moment in time, I think they'd only done the first three. They'd done episodes 4, 5, and 6, and Dan had the inside knowledge that the producers and George Lucas wanted to do episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then do the ones after 6, to do 7, 8, 9. In other words, like shore up the beginning and shore up end of it and what comes after. And Dan knew that. I had not heard anybody else say that in the news or otherwise. Dan had the inside scoop. Dan's family knew Jack Nicholson, the actor that played the Joker in Batman. That's another thing from around the time. The Michael Keaton Batman movie that had Jack Nicholson as the Joker had just come out, or roughly around, was that 89 or something, 88, I don't know. Also yeah, the first Gulf War was 89 or so. That's another interesting thing. And the election was coming up, Clinton Bush basically. All that stuff was from around that time. Yeah, but uh, Batman had a big comeback that was seen as like a new version or new way of looking at Batman. It made it seem new and relevant, basically. But yeah, Dan's uncle lived in California, and their family would visit, and they lived next to. It's giving some inside information, but yeah, they had a way to communicate with Jack Nicholson, the actor who played the Joker, basically. So he's starring in other movies too. But so that's an interesting thing. So Dan probably had the inside scoop through channels such as that. I'm not sure how he knew that it was going to happen. No one else had said it. No one else had said it yet, and it did happen by the time I was in college. Yeah. So that's interesting, huh? Another thing from around the time is Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks was a kind of a good show from around the time, the first 2 seasons. And the second season had just happened. It had me mesmerized. So it was kind of like another group obsession with Twin Peaks. We used to play poker chips and stuff, not with real money, but we were just kids, you know, like poker and stuff. The cards and the early our early material, or the early like fodder for songwriting. Dan was obsessed with like Wicker, because he thought like Wicker was of the devil or something. He thought like Wicker was an interesting like thing to talk about, like a Wicker, or you liked how the word sounded, like Wicker or something. There's something about Wicker, and I saw it on Facebook recently. They show me all this stuff, actually, but there's a Gaelic ritual with the Celts or whatever, the Celts of Gaul. In the Gaelic War, they had this practice of building a huge wicker man, and they put people in there and they burn it. It's an early version of like the Burning Man or something. It's really sick, but like they would build a wicker man for human sacrifices, basically, It's described by Julius Caesar in Book 6 of the Gallic War. Kind of ridiculous, huh? Some merit to liquor being of the devil, basically. It wasn't my aim either to be of the devil. It's just when you're young, your discernment isn't that like strong or whatever. You're not, you know, you're under your parents' guidance, so to speak. Your parents are there to shield you from influences that are bad. Dan wasn't that much of a caustic person overall. He's more mellow and calm like guy. So, but the early album title we had was Iron Dog's Breath, or Porcelain Death, basically. That's a similar level of interesting obsession there. Those were like dance ideas, I think. But we got other songs I'd never talk about. That we had like The Ones Who Never Smile, Tin Man or Tin Boy. I wanted to call it Tin Man. Dan changed the name to Tin Boy. Dan had a way of like revising my titles. I wrote one called Afterbirth. I just put on the page Afterbirth, and Dan thought it was Bob's Afterbirth, or he rewrote it as Bob's Afterbirth. I didn't know why until later. I think, looking backward, Pastor Robert Morey was on the rise, and that's like someone who wrote extensively on like good topics, theology. Bob's Afterbirth means like, you know, the ritual of what is to be done with the afterbirth of someone when they're born. Some Jewish customs and stuff. You'd expect at least like, you know, a tree dedication for such a person. It's an interesting side topic there. But we had one called Limburger, one called Growl too. So we also had like early aims as like writers of novels or short stories. Dan had a lot of like interesting like novel or short story ideas. He had a story about a guy trying to sell a pearl or something. This guy wanted to sell a pearl. In his story, you know, it sounds like a Bible story too. But so many things come to mind. We both liked certain authors, Clive Barker and Tom Robbins. I read this Tom Robbins book, Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas. It has a lot of like taboo topics. You know, like I said, when you're young, your discernment is not as keen. But that's just running down like a list of things that were like part of like the stuff going on at the time, or influences, the cultural like awareness and stuff. And there's the election definitely was hovering over us until our freshman year. Clinton won the election at the time. You know, I was mostly rooting for Bush, but Bush lost on the line that was the no new taxes. Bush said no new taxes, and then Democratic Congress seemed to raise taxes. You know, in our system, it's a tripartite, or three different branches of government in operation. The legislature does something, the president has to approve. After that, sign the bill or veto the bill, basically. And so Congress raised taxes after Bush said no new taxes. It kind of ruined like his chances for re-election, unfortunately. But the Clinton years weren't that bad of an experience, like, you know. But you know, it's America. America is the land of like abundance. So, what else do we got here? The groups that influenced us that were pretty popular at the time. There's Primus. Primus had a new album at the time. I'm gonna say Nirvana is an obvious influence. Nirvana, Nevermind was one of the first things. But, Primus, Sailing the Seas of Cheese came out. Sailing the Seas of Cheese. That was one of them. And Faith No More had a new album. I forgot what it's called. Angel Dust or something. Angel Dust. Soundgarden had a new one coming out. There's the single soundtrack, Screaming Trees. Dan likes Screaming Trees more than me, so Dan had like a Screaming Trees album. There was Smashing Pumpkins. Smashing Pumpkins, they were thought about differently back at that time. They were seen as like glam rock, or they were seen as very like on the fringe and not really part of like the mainstream of stuff yet. They're more on the outside. I remember someone calling them glam rock, actually. And yeah, he and his brother liked the whole plethora of like rap groups and rap metal. Hold on a second. Yeah. But we went through like several drummers at first. We didn't really like settle on a drummer until later. So when we were still in 8th grade, we tried for this one guy, Jason. Jason, like, it never really gelled. We never were able to meet Jason, haven't drummed that much. So then we had a guy named Mike. So for a while we were going to Mike's house, and we were still a lot of people. We were going to Mike's house. We finally got Sam to come and play bass with Mike. One time we got the whole group together as the Autumn People. Isn't that funny? And Mike was playing drums. So we were practicing in Mike's basement. Hold on a second. I can't seem to clear my chest out. Then we met Scott in high school, and the first performance we really had in high school was for a talent show. And Sullivan's Dog was supposed to be an album title. We wanted to keep like the Autumn People. Make Sullivan's Dog the album title. I thought of it one time in gym class because our friend whose last name was Sullivan, his family had an incident with their dog, and had a good meal, sorry. Incident with their dog, made the papers. I still have the article in my files, but the dog wandered away from their house one time, against the owner's wishes, obviously. And this was in the middle of winter, when the lake was frozen over, and the dog wandered over to the local lake, where the water was ice. The dog fell through the ice, basically, and a rescue team had to come and rescue the dog back, basically. I can't seem to clear my throat out. Give me another minute. So weird sign. Maybe I'm talking too much. Who knows? So the dog wandered away from home. A rescue team had to rescue the dog after he fell through the ice of a lake and was going to drown. So there was a guy in like a Gore-Tex suit, scuba gear or whatever, like rescuing the dog. And the newspapers took a picture of it. It made the local newspapers and stuff. So that's interesting. So I was sitting there in lunch gym class, and the light went on. I was like, wait a minute, Sullivan's Dog, right? It's an incident everyone knows, everyone knew in the city. It's kind of an Irish sound to it, the last name and stuff. And maybe like an Eastern mystical vibe as well. Because the other songs like, it's that one, I'm not aware of too many things, I know what you know, if you know what I mean. The Smile on the Dog thing's like an Eastern mystical parody of mystical philosophy. Philosophy is a doggone cereal box, religion is a smile on a dog. So that kind of stuff, was in the cultural awareness too. So Sullivan's Dog sounds like an interesting like group name from them. So once Scott was drumming, we mentioned that to Scott, and after a while of him thinking it over, he was like an older group member. He seemed to feel that it sounded better as a group name rather than an album title. I wanted it as an album title at first. So that's how it became a group name. This Autumn People sounds like we were writing down what we think like once we are like elderly men looking back upon our lives, which is an interesting group concept for a group that young, to write down what you think your elderly self thinks like and is talking like about your whole life. It turns out to be pretty good material on the point already. Okay, so there's that. But I went down most of this as far as what I was going to talk about how we wrote Cacti, but I think I'll just save that for a future like talk. It's already been 15 minutes, and like my chest won't mucus won't clear, so several times. A little to go. Why don't I talk about a different time then? That would be pretty good, probably.